Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am here with another very incredible human up to some really cool things in the world. Amy Natalie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, as I often like to do, I'm going to extend the sort of formal welcome so that people can anchor into an understanding of what you're up to in the world. And then I'm going to invite you to share just the human that's coming into this space. So, Amy Natalie has spent over a decade guiding women back to themselves, not through more thinking, more striving, more pushing or performing, but through the body, the emotions, and the deeper truth that lives beneath the noise. She's the author of the book, The Feminine Way, host of the top-rated podcast, The Feminine Frequency, and a women's embodiment guide whose work sits at the intersection of nervous system healing, feminine leadership, and courageous truth-telling. She's built communities, held transformational spaces, and dedicated her life to helping women trade perfectionism and people pleasing for genuine aliveness. Yes, this is why we connected.
Yeah, it's fun to have you read that and just hear, yeah, the layers of the work that I do in the world. But yeah, as a human, I feel like I'm always discovering new things about myself. And I think that is part of the spiritual path and also part of the path of being an embodied teacher and embodied leader. It's like as soon as you think you know yourself and you know all the answers, you don't, right? And I'm continuously uncovering new layers of who I am as a woman, as a human. And there's a few different pieces that come to mind that I'd love to share with our community here today. So, I was just on a trip to New Mexico. It was the first time that I've been to New Mexico.
Oh,
And
magical.
yeah, I went to Santa Fe and I went with my mentor, and she's a leadership mentor and business mentor. And we actually drove together from Denver to New Mexico. And in the car, we were talking about different aspects of my essence and also of my personality that my community may not know about me and that really have me stand out just because they're the truth of who I am or like my lived experience. So, one of these aspects that is so relatable is that I am an overthinker
Mhm.
and I spend a lot of time in my head. And the reason why I became an embodiment guide and mentor for other women is because that is something that I have struggled with in the past. And in all honesty, those patterns still show up for me, but they don't hold me back. And so, what do I mean by overthinking? Overthinking is, yes, it's having a lot of noise, a lot of thoughts in your head, but I'm also a really deep thinker and a really deep feeler, right? And so, whether it's overthinking about relationships, which is one of the areas for a lot of growth in my life, or overthinking about business, or overthinking about friendships, or overthinking about a decision that I'm making, or overthinking about what's going to happen next and the unknown. The unknown is a big one for me and for a lot of people. And overthinking can manifest as perfectionism. It can manifest as people pleasing. It can manifest as anxiety, as overwhelm, as overworking, meaning that we can get really strongly identified with the work that we do in the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, overthinking is something that I think I'm continuing to learn how to both accept about myself and embrace and learn how to be in relationship with, because I believe that everything is a relationship. And some of the tools that help me in that are meditation. That's been a huge like lifesaver for me for the last 8 to 10 years. I've been meditating daily. And then the somatics and the embodiment work that helps me to get out of my head and come into my heart, my soul, my womb, and be in the present moment with the sensations that are alive for me. So that's one piece of me that I think is helpful for our audience to know about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And part of why I knew I wanted to invite you to have a conversation on this podcast is it's not about a perfected arrival. At least those aren't the people I like to spend time with. It's about self-awareness and building bridges. And I know in my own somatic training, what was so powerful that I witnessed within myself and with clients is when you build a bridge between the mind and the body, it becomes a relationship and a conversation rather than the mind just bullying, you know? And I think I hear that in what you're saying is it's an ongoing nourishment of that relationship so that you can feel more balanced. Because overthinking is one way to say it, but I look at your human design chart because that's part of what I nerd out about before a guest comes on. And you have definition in your whole chart, meaning all your energy centers are defined
Yeah.
except for the ones in your head. So
Yeah.
you are very open to ideas and there can be this pressure to know. But you're meant to be wise and fluid in your expansive thinking, but negotiating the pressure of the world to know
Mhm.
is a whole thing. And your body's like, we're metabolizing it. We're metabolizing it. We're we're here with you. You know, it's just a really cool holy both and, like I often like
Mhm.
to say.
Yeah. Yeah, when other people have looked at my chart, they're like, whoa, I don't see that often that all of the centers are defined except for, I think it's the third eye and the crown. Is that right?
Yeah, or head and ajna is what they
Head
call
and
it in human
ajna.
design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then in astrology, my primary sign, my sun sign is Gemini. And Gemini is, very it's airy, it's heady, it's,
Yeah.
very it can be analytical, but also articulate. And I think that's also
Mhm.
something that's really a gift of overthinking and is the level of self-awareness that is available, and then also the ability to articulate and communicate the whether it's the emotional triggers or the thought leadership that comes through. It's like, can we use the thinking, and then can we share it in a way that's actually helpful to the world or to our relationships?
Yeah. And when you have all that definition in the sort of below the neck part of
Mhm,
your design, and you have this powerful mind that can serve that wisdom
mhm,
rather than suppress it,
mhm,
it's a whole different thing. And I was getting tickled, like I often do when I see people naturally just walking the path of their design. You talk about a frequency, and literally your design is you are emitting the frequency from all of those energy centers. You are putting it out for others who have those centers undefined to receive and amplify. So all this work to unstory and restory the parts that aren't in alignment with your values and your true humanity is not only for you, but it's also going out as an unconscious energetic gift, and it's a form of
mhm,
your leadership, which is really cool that you're just naturally naming that in your work. Like, get into your body because your body's having this whole conversation with all
mhm.
of life, and you don't even have any, puzzle pieces missing below the neck. You're
Mm.
just sharing it out.
Yeah, and I think one of the pieces you just said is like really looking from the neck down, and one of the approaches that I take in my own life and also in my teachings is this body leadership, like leading with the body and then taking action with the mind.
Yep.
Right. And in our culture, we're taught totally the opposite. It's like you got to make those pros and cons lists to get to a decision instead of feeling the decision in your body, right? You've got to know exactly what steps to take and exactly where you're going versus like, ooh, this feels expansive and exciting for me to move towards, or oh, that feels like a no in my body. So, yeah, really looking at how can we even tune in to the wisdom of our emotions to lead the way, or to our pleasure and our sensuality to lead the way. And yeah, this piece of like emitting frequency that you shared about in my chart, that was another thing that I talked about with my mentor this week. And it's part of my leadership that is like the embodied leadership that I've just mostly had reflected to me by other people, is being a permission slip.
Yep.
Like, like permissioning other women, like, oh, she can dress like that, she can use her voice like that, she can show up online like that, she can have that type of relationship, she can have those types of friendships, like just simply the observation, because this has happened to me when I've looked at other leaders and women that I am inspired by. It opens the field of possibility because we only know what we know and we can only see what we see. And so if we only see women who are acting or showing up in a certain way, or leaders showing up in a certain way, we think, oh, that's the way that it needs to be done. But as soon as we start to open the door and be like, oh, I can have a really fulfilling, purpose-filled career, but I can also enjoy my life. I can also have deep, rich, meaningful relationships and amazing sex. Like you can have all of that, and having those conversations, but without even really necessarily needing to say that, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
Because one of the things that really changed my understanding of transformational work is that 95% of what's going on, we're completely unconscious of, and things like mirror neurons, and there's all kinds of neurological explanation for the fact that we feel much more than we are receiving on that conscious level. And so, it's like parents who say one thing to their children but are being completely different creates this dissonance and this internal struggle. Whereas when you're saying something and emitting it, regardless of one's design, your design just happens to have kind of more of a energetic, I would say, density to what it's able to share. But we're all emitting. We're
Hmm.
all embodied permission slips or not in
Hmm.
how we're moving. And it's really, I think, unfortunately, not discussed enough. But luckily, it's a conversation that I see happening more, that embodiment and somatic approach. Now, here's the question that I'm really excited to ask because on my own path of somatic work, I had to back up. We both are 6'2" profiles in human design, which
Mm,
means we
cool.
are the embodied role models. We have to live the shit to be the permission slips for others. So it can get messy. So, I had like disordered eating for a short time. I was an overweight kid. I tried to wrangle and suppress and dismiss my body. I had skin issues that were anxiety. Like I had all this stuff, right? And it was necessary for me to reclaim it as wisdom and choose it as how I want to live. And I think we all have some version of a story of evolution toward our deeper truth or our relationship with our bodies. So I'm curious about yours. Anything that
Mhm.
you're open to sharing about how you've come to the point you are right now with it?
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I love that we're both 6'2" profiles.
It's a vibe. It's a whole
It is.
vibe.
I do. And sometimes I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is great. And a lot of times I'm like, oh man, why do I have to live the shit to like then teach it? Like it's hard.
It's
It's
hard.
not fun all the
You
time.
don't get to bypass anything, but that's
Yeah.
why similar to what you said, I think that's why people trust me so much that they can feel that
Mm-hmm.
I have lived it, my own version, and am
Hmm.
sharing from that place rather than from some like sideways wisdom place.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying other profiles all do that, but there's a feeling of
Yeah.
somebody who has like become the pearl because of the grit.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember there was a point in my life where I was like, oh, my story's not interesting enough. I haven't been through enough challenges for people to really resonate with me or to really stand out, right? And that was
Yikes. Order
before
up.
my Saturn return, my initial spiritual initiation that I had in my late 20s. But yeah, I mean, the reason how I even got into personal development in the first place was because of my mental health. I used to, from the time I was at the end of high school, was when I was diagnosed with clinical depression, and I had panic attacks and really bad, what they call like adjustment anxiety, which is like anytime you have a transition in your life where there's a lot of unknowns. So basically fear of the unknown, welcome to being human, but like on a heightened level. And so I was living this, what I would call picture perfect life. I followed the rules of society. I got married by the time I was 25. I bought a home. I had my own business. And it looked great. You know, it really did look great on the outside, but inside I was struggling with emotional eating. I had a ton of digestive issues and hormone imbalances. I was having a hard time losing weight because I was in adrenal fatigue. I was having this dissonance between who I really am on a soul truth level and what my life looked like because unknowingly, I had created a life based on good girl conditioning and being a people pleaser. Like, I just really wanted specifically my parents' validation and approval, my family of origin, and then also my community that I grew up in. I grew up in more of a traditional Jewish community, and it was very much focused on looking the part, on behaving a certain way, on fitting in, on conforming. And there was a lot of gossip. There was a lot of negative talk. It wasn't just that I was afraid of judgment, I was seeing other people judging other people and knew that if I wasn't conforming, that would be me, right?
Yeah.
And so I went through this whole individuation process at that time where I went through 3 years of really deep excavation and of this thought in my mind of like, oh, well, I should just be happy. Why am I not happy? What's wrong with me? And then all the shame that came with that. And eventually, after working with a life coach, working with a therapist, doing a yoga teacher training, getting my meditation certification, like really doing deep work that I got to a place where I was like, this isn't actually me. It's not even specifically only about the relationship that's not the right fit, but like my life that I'm living is not who I really am. And part of that, I definitely struggled with body image. I struggled with confidence. I struggled with self-worth. And those are all pieces that I got to work through in order to be the leader, the friend, the daughter, the partner that I am today. So from that point on, I really made radical changes in my life. At 27 years old, I made the hardest decision ever, which was to leave my marriage and leave it was a very, loving partner. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things because I knew it wasn't just affecting him, but it was affecting both of our families. It was affecting my entire world. And that was one of my like deepest learnings is about living in truth
Yep.
and being a truth teller, being honest with yourself and then being honest with others. And then after that, my journey, a lot of it has been around, exploring who am I outside of that role that I was playing. It's been almost 10 years since that experience. And a lot of my journey now has been around exploring how do I create more pleasure in my life because my tendency is to lean towards working, it lean towards pouring into my business, leaning towards I don't know, just like being in the mode of the masculine mode, the hyper masculine. And there's nothing wrong with those skills. They're actually very great skills to have, and I'm very grateful that I have them. And my constant practice is how do I come back home to that flow, to that ease, to that play, to that joy, to the connection? Like those are all the pieces, the creativity, the intuition. And that's like my ongoing work is to tap into what I like to call the feminine frequency and supporting other women to do that through embodiment work as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's so helpful when people hear real stories of the messy evolution of self and the reclamation of truth in
Mhm.
spite of the world. And I'm, as you were talking, I was just thinking about this conversation that I've been having for years around the masculine and the feminine, which is not gendered, it's energies we all carry within us, right? But the the gold stars that we culturally earn from being productive and achieving and the very clear conditioning around pleasure being devalued
Mhm.
and also I think on a nervous system level we're taught in many unconscious ways that it's unsafe. It's
Mhm.
unsafe to let your guard down, to be receptive, to be supportive, to be intuitive, to like trust this deeper right hemispheric wisdom that emerges from the body. And the body is my best BS detector. Like my mind will spin all the shoulds that I've inherited that I don't even realize I'm still carrying, but my body will be like, nah, nope, not that, not them, not now, you know? So, how do you practically, because I love offering people some practical tools, how do you negotiate or know the difference between when your mind is going towards serving something that matters and when you actually are just in a momentum, whether it's from outside of yourself or just a pattern in your body, and you need to invite yourself to pause and to receive or to recharge or whatever it might be in that moment. How do you dance between the masculine and feminine modes of operation?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think to highlight, like, we actually need both,
Absolutely.
right? And that they're both very powerful energies that we have both of them for a reason.
Yep.
And I think we can tell when we're quote unquote out of balance. We all know what that our own symptoms and signals are. And I always say, like, our body is always giving us these signals.
Yep.
And it's a matter of whether we're tuned in and we're listening or we're avoiding or numbing or distracting. So, what I can tell when I am feeling out of balance, meaning that I've gone into what I call masculine overdrive, is my immune system starts to tank. I start to get sick more often, or I feel like I'm getting sick. So for me, that's like my lymph nodes in my throat are like the first indicator for me, like, okay, we got to listen, right? Um, for me, it can be anxiety. It can be tension in my jaw when I'm, clenching my jaw unknowingly. That's a lot of where I hold my tension.
Yeah.
For me, it's like sitting for too long, literally to the point where like my butt falls asleep sometimes on the chair because I'm working and I'm not even paying attention to the fact that I have to go pee, or because that like my neck or my back are hurting because I've just been sitting for so long.
Yeah.
These are all my own signs. Other signs can be just like I'm not feeling a lot of joy or inspiration. I feel kind of stagnant. Those are all signals that I am personally disconnected from my feminine energy, which I like to refer to as life force energy,
Mhm.
aliveness, right? We all have had moments, whether it's dancing on the dance floor or like going to a concert or having a moment in nature where you just feel that aliveness, right? And where things feel more easeful. You don't have to try so hard. You think about you're going to call someone and they're calling you, or there's an idea that comes through and then you get that, that other people have are reinforcing that. Like there's just different ways where we can tell when we're in flow and when we have ease, and we can tell when we're not in that mode, right?
Mhm.
So, for people who tend to be more heady, more in the analytical, logical way of being, because we've been conditioned that way, some
Yeah.
people are naturally just more oriented towards that. My brother is like that.
Yeah.
He is much more analytical than I am. I'm a lot more emotions based, sensual based, right? Um, but for those of us who have learned that as a strategy,
Yeah.
because it is a strategy, we can actually use some of that to our advantage to help us to shift into or to create more harmony and have more of that feminine flow. So, what do I mean by that? We can use something as simple as our calendars.
Yeah.
Beginning of the day, I set a boundary for myself. I do not start working until 9:30 a.m. because if it was up to that overdrive part of me, I would be on my computer at 8 a.m.,
Yeah.
right? So having that scheduled, having a lunch break and or a dance break or a nature break, 10, 15 minutes in the afternoon to get up, to get outside, to breathe, to move your body. Those are all ways that we can shift. Having at the end of the day, some type of wind down where or transition point from when you're working to when you're hanging out with friends or with your family. These are all different ways that we can make that shift. Um, Another piece for me is like the feminine really loves beauty, and the feminine really loves like slowness and spaciousness.
Mhm.
So when I notice that my calendar is just back to back to back, there's not enough time for me to have a little bit of spaciousness and breathing room. So those are some of the indicators, and where I would start is bringing awareness to what are your personal signals that maybe you're out of balance. And then what are some ways that you can actually use that skill set that you have to build in time for connection?
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to kind of zero in on something you said towards the end there, which is spaciousness. And um, you didn't say stillness, but that's what I'm sensing. And I want to name for the people listening, the body speaks before it yells. And so if we don't have enough spaciousness to get curious and tune inward and learn the language of the body, because it's its own language. We're taught, as a former therapist, we're taught to label emotions but not feel them. The
Mhm.
body will say, this is soft, this is tight, this is heavy, this is hard, this is prickly. And then you learn those cues, right? Just like I have my own version of what you said, but we have to have enough time to let the body meet us in that conversation, because I think I've worked with so many people who are on such a hamster wheel of velocity that they don't even know that the body is speaking. They might be able to say they're unhappy, but they couldn't say I'm unhappy when I this, or I am thriving when I'm this, because they're identified with the momentum. They're identified with the pushing. They're identified with the enduring. I've met a lot of people where they're in a place of martyrdom, but don't realize it because that's just the life they've known. And the body, until it, causes adrenal issues or chronic colds or some other life explosion outside of themselves, they don't get the quiet they need to actually hear. So I want to just tell people, as counterintuitive as it might be for your nervous system, creating that space and using your mind and your will to hold it and prioritize it is essential. Otherwise, your body, you're going to get the sledgehammer moment from your body, and that's not fun. I've had it many, many times.
Yeah, and sometimes that is the way that we learn, but it's not
Totally.
necessary all the time. And yeah, I mean, I think slowing down isn't sexy. Like it's not sexy.
No.
It's not the thing that's like going to keep feeding your ego. It's just not. And especially now with technology, with AI, with all these things, we are moving at such a fast pace, and our attention span is just literally getting annihilated. Our attention span is so to it's the opposite of slowing down. It's like addicted to the dopamine, addicted to checking the email, checking the social media, checking, communicating, always being plugged in. And so either you're gonna default to that and you're gonna go along with the status quo, or if you really want to create a life that's meaningful and that actually feels good and that is in alignment for you, like it is a requirement that you find practices or find ways to meet yourself, to be with yourself, to get quiet, to listen. And if you're doing deeper healing work, you're not just doing what you call, I kind of call it like the mental masturbation, where it's like, okay, I know all my patterns. I know my patterns. I can analyze them. I can think about them. I can explain them, but I'm not actually seeing changes. I'm not actually feeling happier or feeling more connected or feeling more fulfilled. It's like, oh, okay, this is the work is feeling, is sensing, is connecting. Yeah.
Yeah, if we want to do that deep alchemical transformation and healing, we have to move at the pace of the body, not the
Mhm.
pace of the world around us. And one of the things you wrote in your guest response form that I send to everyone is that conversations around leadership and relationship are fun for you. And that's, of course, my jam too. And I just, I would love to open a conversation about what I often call new paradigm leadership. Like the leadership model that is emerging isn't about hustle. It's not about proving and pushing. It's about resonance. And I think when we are in integrity within ourselves, meaning we are who we are and our nervous system is aligning and weaving in with that, we create a signal to the intelligence of life and not only impact those that we're in relationship with as a permission slip, but we also attract some really resonant opportunities from life that we don't have to force. And you and I have had some conversations as we've gotten to know each other about this flavor of magic. And there's science behind it, but I'm curious if you can speak to your understanding of this emerging approach to leadership that isn't driven by the ego and about what you can prove and push out into the world and earn gold stars, but it's about what do you think it's about, actually? I'm
Mhm.
just going to leave it wide open.
Yeah, this is actually a big part of what I write about in the beginning of my book about the shift that we're seeing in consciousness. We've moved into the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is a lot more um, it's a lot more community based. It's a lot about authenticity. And it's a lot about the fact that each of us has a unique value that we bring. And when we're living in our unique essence and we are all contributing that unique value, there is no need for better than, worse than, hierarchical. We've been in a hierarchical mode. We see it in our government, we see it in politics, we see it in the way that businesses and corporations run. We are shifting into a whole new paradigm of how we operate. And it is a shift in consciousness that's happening, especially as people are becoming more emotionally intelligent. I noticed this even today. I was walking out of the coffee shop and I just overheard people at the table when I was walking out. This man was talking about, I think he might have been a real estate agent or something, and he was talking about, oh, that's about my self-worth.
Yeah.
Now, if we rewind 15, 20 years ago, those are not the types of conversations that people are having. If we look at teenagers and we look at kids and the level of awareness that they have is very, very, very different to what our parents and what our grandparents had. And the reason why I speak to this is because when we talk about the resonance, if people are becoming more emotional intelligent and they're becoming more in touch with their feelings, which a lot of people are, there's still many people who are not, we can start to sense when something feels true and when something doesn't feel true. And especially in this age of artificial intelligence, the people who are going to stand out and the people who are going to be able to move through these changes that we're having in society are people who are continuing to stay true to themselves and continue to speak and act in the resonance of truth. And I believe that there are more than enough people out there, and that the people who resonate with you are going to find you, and the people that resonate with me are going to find me, and that there will be some overlap inevitably. But you are not me, I am not you. And there's going to be different pieces of whether it's guidance or healing or things that we can offer that are the right match for the right people in the right timing, right? So that's the way that I think about it. Of course, there's tons of research in quantum physics, there's tons of research around how this actually works on a frequency and a vibrational level, but I think just even speaking about kind of where we're moving as a society and also how does resonance and frequency work, it's like, yeah, as soon as I started to be more on this path of truth, I'll give a real life examples. Like I used to have a really hard time with female friendships. It was one of my hardest things growing up. And as soon as I stepped out of playing the good girl, people pleaser, pretending everything's okay, and actually really sharing, like, oh yeah, I'm going through a really big transition right now, or oh, I'm going through something really hard, that just that honesty, I ended up starting to connect with women in the ways that I really wanted to, but it literally felt like they came out of nowhere. I was like, where are all these women coming from? Like, where have they been? And before I knew it, it was like my birthday, and I had, I don't know, 15 new women, new and old, that I actually felt like I had a deep connection with. And it was such a reflection of that shift of going from the performative way of being to the authentic and true way of being. And that was a resonance shift.
Yeah, and that circles back to a term it sounds like we both use, embodied leadership. When
Mhm.
we are really focused on embodying what we say matters rather than performing some version of shouldery, like who we should be, what life tells us we should be, um, that's when the magic happens. And it's not that life becomes easy all the time, because there's still lessons, there's still soul school, there's still all these things, but there's a flow to it, and there's we get to be supported by it. Another thing that was really significant on my path around feminine energetics was I learned to be independent and to be really proud of that. To be I come from a family system that's probably the top value, I would say. And so the unlearning around love and relationship is about not burdening and handling my shit. Instead, going, the purpose of life is to be in connection and community and reciprocal whatever of the moment, because that actually benefits everyone and we all get to contribute our purpose, our like unique weirdness, our unique magic. And that's real human abundance. We're part of something bigger. And for me, that really calmed my nervous system to remember that I'm not alone with other humans, but also with all of life. And I think a lot of people who are walking around feeling very dysregulated and alone in spite of being in crowds, it's because of some of that deep learning around having to not show the self and not receive
Mhm.
anything from life. So
Yeah.
I just have a sense that might hit for some people listening.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you just used that word receiving, because when we are in that hyper independent mode, it's like, oh, I'm always the one giving. I'm always the one doing. I have to take care of everything by myself. I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to put pressure on people. I don't want them to feel responsible, right? And so there is an art of receiving that is, to me, one of the most feminine attributes that we can have, is this receptivity. And to me, that requires an openness
Yep.
instead of this hardening and this guardedness and this like kind of rigid, I'll do it all on my own. It's like, oh, can I open my heart and can I let people in?
Yeah.
Can I soften my shoulders and not feel like I have to hold the weight of the world all by myself? Can I be willing to ask for support or accept support, because there is support all around us in the spiritual realm, there's tons of support, and in the physical and the human realm there's so much support. And I think it's a huge reason why women struggle with burnout. It's a huge reason why some women have a hard time in relationship. And the example that I like to give around receiving is like, really think about the last time that you did something for someone else. Maybe you made them a meal, or you sent them a text because you knew they were having a hard day. And think about how good that feels to be able to give to someone, right? Like, it does something for us on a human level, on a soul level, to be able to contribute to other people. But if other people are trying to give to you and you just have this wall up, or you don't let that in, there is a block in connection that happens, right? And so yeah, I think that mutual reciprocity, it's almost like breathing. It's like we receive when we inhale and then we give when we exhale. And it's like we have to have both of those to have that mutual reciprocity happening.
Yeah. And we have to restory what we've learned about that. Not that long ago, I was introduced to the term high functioning codependency.
Mhm.
And I love that term and I love the conversation around it, because codependency is an addiction to being centered, needed, and in control. That's just what it is. And it's very self-oriented, even though it looks very other-oriented. And realizing that it's quite selfish to block ourselves from being open to receiving and in true relationship to the people we say we care about was something that gave me a lot of permission to do it differently. And I think it was in 2025, my word of the year was soft, just reclaiming soft as a source of power,
Mhm.
softening into my power, softening into my essence, softening with life. So everywhere there was a hard edge, nope, we don't do that anymore. We do it soft. And I was having a conversation with someone not long ago, and I said, my litmus test now is if I'm in a relationship or situation and I feel myself hardening, it's not for me.
Mm.
It's just not for me. That's something that shows me that I'm not able to move the way I choose to move in life. And gosh, that's radical coming from the family and learning that I came from. But life responds differently when you move that way. I'm sure you feel something similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I think that these are they can be such subtleties and they live in our body, like you're saying, like the feeling that you get in your body and many of us are still learning the language of the body, like you shared. And yeah, I think that life feels very different when and I guess I'll back up a little bit to what you were sharing about the programming is that soft historically for men and women has been equated with weak,
Yep.
right? And we have to restore that, redefine that. I would say especially as women, but also as men, with
Yep.
men.
Yep.
Because if we really, really want heart connection, we really want that depth of connection with other people, we have to be willing to be witnessed in all of who we are, and it does take a lot of strength and a lot of courage to be willing to let yourself be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And we get to be discerning with that and choose where we practice. But as I think about the soft versus the hard life, like soft or hard pants, I think about it almost more like we can move through life rigid, and I see like fists clenched, grabbing hard, or more supple. And I think about the tree branches that are just able to grow around obstacles. There's enough moisture in them to move and adapt. So it's not soft like somebody can just take a deep breath and blow you over kind of soft. It's a softness to move with life rather
Mhm,
than being rigid because when we're rigid, we're brittle. We break easily. So
mhm,
of course life feels harsh and unkind and I mean sometimes life feels unkind anyway, let's be real. But there's a resilience that comes from a more supple approach to life, I find. And that's what I find myself wanting for people after so many years, not even knowing I was stuck in a harder way of living because it was just what I'd seen, what I learned, what I knew. But
mhm,
now that I know this soft way, I just want more of it. I'm
mhm.
I'm moving into my, I'm a few years, well, 4 years off from my no, I'm about to have a birthday, only a few years from 50. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep getting softer and dancing with life in a more graceful way. That's my goal from here on. That's my goal. And it just makes me feel stronger, which is so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure there's people who are listening to this who are like, I don't really want to be there. There's this term that's been going around for a long time, which is like the soft girl era,
Yeah.
right? And I think that I think what we're talking about is going from being in that hard, rigid place to coming into more of a harmony of your masculine and
It.
feminine energy, right?
Yeah.
And rather, because I know for you and I, like being in service and being in leadership is important to us,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so we still get to have that forward momentum. And it's like, how are we doing that? What is the energy in which we are moving things forward? And is that depleting us, or is that energizing us? Is that nourishing us? Is it supporting us? And it is a dance, it's a practice. Like, I don't have it all figured out. I've known about these things for a really long time. I've made a lot of progress. I have a lot of embodied wisdom, and there's still seasons in life where I default and I have to come back, and like it's totally a practice for sure.
Yeah, we're on different ends of the seesaw is kind of I think the relationship with the body is the body shows me where I am so that I can recalibrate according to what I say I want. It's going to
Mhm.
tell me kind of where I am, and then I can adjust to the context of life and be it in agency. And I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. So, as we bring this conversation toward a close, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to speak imaginal vision, your vision of imaginal change into this space, because it's a bit like casting a spell. There's something to be said for speaking a vision or a dream. So, what wants to come through you right now, through your own leadership, through your own embodied wisdom, to be spoken into this space as far as what you're dreaming up through your very own life and work
Mm.
world?
Yeah, this is beautiful timing because I really am in the process of birthing a new evolution of my work. And as I'm doing that, I am really going deeper into like the why and the mission and the vision that I have, not just for me, but for the world and for women. And yeah, my intention and what I'm creating is a movement of women who are connected to their bodies, a movement of women who are connected to their pleasure, a movement of women who are connected to their intuition, self-trust, truth, and a movement of women who are really feel and know that they belong. Like that's a really big piece of it is creating communities for women to grow and transform and heal together because there is such a piece of our healing and growth where we need to be in connection in order to dissolve shame. We need to be in connection in order to have things reflected back to us. So, yeah, the movement that I'm creating in the world is the feminine frequency, and I have the Feminine Frequency Academy coming up in a few months. And that is, a space, it's a premier academy for women to get out of the overthinking and start leading from their body, coming home to themselves in that way. Yeah.
I love it. Well, usually I close the episode with that, but now I have to just nod to another part of your design because it's always fun, I think, for people listening to go, no way, that you can't make that up. So, one of the things I always look at is what people's life purpose gate is. And if you don't know human design, it doesn't matter the jargon of the gate and the position. But this is the main theme. We are here to work with, heal, grow into, and essentially radiate into the world. And yours is often referred to as the gate of gathering. And it's all about bringing people together to steward resources mindfully in service of collective well being for an abundant experience. And so, what you just said is such a beautiful example of you living your design through literally your offerings. And this is why these conversations are so fun when I'm talking with people about their business model and their messaging and their offerings. It's like if you can align it with your design, you're resonant in a way that's really special. So I love that you're embodying this leadership paradigm of gathering and shared resources because resources doesn't just mean money. It's energy, it's pleasure, it's connection, it's intimacy, it's all of those. And I just love that you're up to that. I love that you're doing that and bringing that into the world. So,
Yeah, it's one of the things that honestly matters most to me and that I enjoy the most. Even recently, I started last year a supper club where once a month I get together with friends because I noticed that once my friends started having kids, we weren't seeing each other as much. And so we started the supper club and it's been incredible. And then I have an entrepreneur group here in Asheville, and it's like, just bringing spaces in addition outside of my business, but for a deeper connection. And yeah, it's really such a joy. And there's a lot of ease in doing that for me. It hasn't always been that way, but I love that that's in my chart, and I didn't know that was in my chart. So
It
thank you
is the
for
North
illuminating
Star
that.
of your chart, I would say.
Okay.
So, yeah, so you're doing it. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I will let everyone listening know that there will be links in the show notes so that you can connect and listen to her podcast, listen, like do all the things. Connect, go forth, connect, be part of her community. And Amy Natalie, thank you for being here. Thank you for making time to share your wisdom and your just your evolution of purpose with the people listening. I always appreciate it. It's always a gift. So thank you.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.